Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the chamber, I'd like to talk about two things, if I may, if you'll indulge me. And that is not only the substance of the bill that's before us, but the process that got us to this point. The substance of the bill before us, as laid out by Representative Walker, is we in the state of Connecticut had a problem, a big problem. We, all of us in this chamber who, at the outset of our term, raised our right hand and said that we would abide by the Constitution of the state of Connecticut. A Constitution that demands by its terms a balanced budget. And for a whole host of reasons, we found ourselves out of balance. Out of balance to the point where action had to be taken. In this document, as we sat down and worked out the details, I think it should be known, a couple of things should be known. First of all, I think all of us universally said we need to know the extent of the problem, so we're not chasing a number. So that OFA doesn't say one number and OPM doesn't say another number and even the comptroller office says another number, because if we allow that to happen and we take action on a number, there will be those who will criticize us that we did not solve the problem. And first of all, let's define the problem. The problem is a budget deficit in the fiscal year that we're currently in, which ends June 30, 2013. That was our task. No more, no less. So all of us together insisted that we know the true depth, if you will, of the problem. We asked the Office of Fiscal Analysis and the Office of Policy and Management, and even asked the Comptroller's Office to get together and do what we hope to do. Come up with a consensus deficit number, if you will. And also come up with an agreement on what the true value was of the governor's rescissions that he made in November 28th. And they did that. So we started the process all shooting for the same goal. The deficit prior to the rescissions was $365 million. The governor's rescissions amounted to net $113 million. So as we sat at that first day, our goal was to close a gap of $252 million. Now, we all had our various ideology and philosophy and ideas on how we should best close that gap. These were ideas that didn't just pop in our head the day before. There are ideas on both sides of the aisle and the executive branch that had been formulated in some cases over a lifetime in public office. Things we really believed in. People we had fought for years. And yet we were assigned the task of cutting back on those people and those programs. And whether you voted for them or not, once they are in place, programs affect people. Every line item in a budget has an effect on a human being. Maybe someone we represent, maybe someone we don't. But every single person that is affected by a budget lives in the state, our state. And whether you voted for the budget that we were trying to fix or not, many of us believed that it is our problem, not the governor's problem or the Democrats' problem. This is the state of Connecticut. And people come before politics. This is our state. Therefore, when we have a problem, it is our problem. And it was in that spirit that we sat down at that table. And we had a very vigorous, trust me when I tell you, discussion about how to solve the problem. There's some things in this bill that were easy to agree upon. In this bill, because of the tragedy that happened on Friday, we were able to come together without any discussion whatsoever to agree that we needed to give the town of Newtown some flexibility with regard to their school schedule. That's in this bill. We came together with no discussion whatsoever and realized that that community especially might be facing new questions with regard to school security. And we've amended our LoCIP program to allow people to apply to that program for purposes of school security. We did that for Newtown. That's in this bill. Everything else, I might say, wasn't easy. Because, as I said, each line item affected a person. We had stalemates. We left the room, sometimes in a huff, sometimes with a smile. We would retreat back to our respective corners and see if we couldn't work a little harder. And as I mentioned in my remarks during the memorial, that Friday when we came in, it didn't look good. It didn't look good at all. We felt we're not going to do it. We were far enough apart that a solution looked impossible. And again, as I indicated, and indulge me, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I think it's so important with regard to what we are about to do. With the background of the news and the reports coming from Newtown, we did our job, many with tears in our eyes, breaking to call loved ones and take calls from people who were directly affected by the tragedy. At one point, we were together in the room and we paused and we watched the president speak. Some moments later, we paused and watched our governor speak at the scene. I watched some of my colleagues, many of whom have children, who were in that room, stare at that television and cover their mouth, and I saw their eyes mist with emotion. That was the atmosphere we were in. Besides saying what a tragedy it was, besides telling our stories, we never brought what happened in Newtown to bear on what we were doing, at least not directly. There were times that we were this close to walking away, to saying it's not going to happen, that we're going to come back in and do what unfortunately has become commonplace in politics. We were going to stand by our ideology. We were going to be immobile. We were going to scream at each other and point fingers and not have a solution. And then something happened. I don't know what. We never talked about it in that room, never once. But we started to get a little more comfortable with each other, a little more trusting. We went to the speaker's office and we physically sat closer together. It wasn't intended, it just happened that way. And slowly, idea after idea would come up. And maybe the person who proposed it wasn't getting 100% of what they wanted. But they got a little bit here and a little bit there, and the other person gave a little bit. And before you know it, drained by emotion of the day, drained by fatigue of the process, it was about 12:30, I believe. And we hit the number. We hit the number. And we looked around the table to verify, because you know this place. Well, I didn't mean, And we started shaking our heads. I think we did it. I think we did it. We had nonpartisan staff in the perimeter of the room We looked with bated breath to see, did we do it? They were keeping tabs of all this. And they looked up and they nodded their head and said, we did it. You reached the number. We got up, it was, as I said, almost 1 in the morning, and we shook hands and we embraced. And many of us got in the car and drove home. I happen to have an hour and 10-minute drive home. And as I'm driving, I'm like, what just happened? And again, as I said in my remarks earlier, it was the spirit of Sandy Hook that was in that room. Call it divine intervention. I don't know what you might call it. I don't know what you believe in, but something happened in that room. And we came to an agreement. Now, I've just taken about 3 times as long to describe the process than I did the substance of the bill. And I did that on purpose. Because I think that when we work together, regardless of who's in the governor's office, of who's in the majority, and who's in the minority, when we respect each other's ideas, when we sit together at a table, when we're committed to solving a problem, when the number one thing isn't party or politics or power, but the people we represent, we do good things. We do good things. I doubt that there's many people outside of Connecticut that watch CTN, but boy, tonight, I hope to God that every decision maker in Washington, D.C. is watching this chamber. Look, I don't know what the results could be, but I have a feeling we're going to do a good thing. I have a feeling in the spirit of Sandy Hook, in the spirit of this season, that we're going to come together. Not everyone's going to like anything that's in this thing. That's the definition of a compromise. Everyone walks away a little ticked off, a little mad, a little feeling that they didn't get exactly what they want. But when you think about it and you think of the true nature of this chamber, a representative body, a microcosm of the very state that we represent, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Now, I don't want to pretend to anyone for one moment, and I don't think you believe it either, that voting on this document is going to solve our problems. No, it very specifically solves a budget deficit that we currently have right now for this fiscal year. No more, no less. But I think we all know, and we learn every day, that new challenges and new problems are going to pop up. If we could follow that process that I described, if we can embrace and hold dear that spirit of Sandy Hook, we could look those that we represent in the eye and said we could say we did our job. I'm more proud of the process that created this document than I am of the document itself. I've worked with so many of the people across the aisle in the governor's office for many years, but I've never had this level of respect and love for them. Because I realize, though our ideology is different, our goal was the same. What's in the best interest of the state of Connecticut? We have different ways to show it. We have different ways to say it. We have different thoughts of how to accomplish it. But that's our common goal. And if we start with that common goal, there's no end to the good we could do. No matter what the problem is. We could face any problem. We could solve any problem as long as we do it with respect and we do it together. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for your participation in this process. It was a joy. Mr. Majority Leader, I can't thank you enough for your participation. Representative Walker, you were phenomenal. And I want to assure everybody who has certain ideologies that your respective representatives in that room, you should be proud. Because they brought forth and articulated those ideologies and fought for them 100%, as did those on the other side of any issue. But that's the nature of a compromise. I want to commend the governor the governor for allowing and facilitating this process. I want to commend his staff, specifically Secretary Barnes, as was said. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy sitting around a table for hour after hour till the wee hours of the morning for a solid week plus. But we did it. Now, this might not be the answer to everyone. I understand that. But I hope that in a few moments, after our majority leader addresses us, and we are faced with the choice of red or green, I hope there's a sea of green up there. Because not only is it symbolic of this time on this day, given the circumstances we're in, given what we did earlier today, but I hope it's a message because, as everyone said today, what happened in Sandy Hook didn't just happen in Sandy Hook. It didn't just happen in Connecticut. The world was watching. And in my belief, from the bottom of my heart, this agreement is because of the spirit of Sandy Hook. And I hope that what we do here today could be a lesson to those in Washington and in state capitals all over this country. Let's keep the spirit alive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.